Hello, YouTube. I set today at 1 p.m. and for some reason it said December p.m. and I couldn't change that, so I don't know how that affected things. How is everybody? Nobody. I'm Aphrodite, you're a Starfire. Welcome to my channel. Is anybody going to get notifications? Notifications. You like my PR thing? I don't think anybody knows. We will see if anybody shows up. I'll be right back. Gay person! Did it say on my live stream it's supposed to go on 1969? For some reason I set it for today at 1 o'clock and it said December 31st, 1969. What's up? What's up, everybody? Deru, yes. Did it say 1969? I'm gonna pack myself a little busy bowl and then we'll get to brass tacks, to business. See, wow, it really said 1969 on my thing. I couldn't get it to turn off. It said today, but I set it up. So I will be reading excerpts from this textbook called The Anthropology of Medicine. This was one of my textbooks at UCSD, that is University of California, San Diego. And this is actually an undergraduate class I took, the Anthropology of Medicine, but it was a graduate level class for my human biology major. And it was the only class I had that I took on the medical school campus. So I had to huff it. UCSD is already like the biggest University of California campus by square mileage. And can take you like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to walk from one class to another. So what's up, guys? I was flipping through this book because I remembered it in this class. This class we mostly focused on end-of-life issues, cultural differences among death. So that was kind of the main focus of how different cultures see death. Like Italians focus on the stomach and death. Like if your stomach's not working, that's what means you're like sick or close to death. Like America, it's mostly around like we say you're dead when you're brain dead. Israel, it's the heart, when your heart stops. So different cultures like use different organs as like as a harbinger of death. You know what this is? Anybody want to guess what this is? right, so I'm reading. So very interesting. This medical anthropology book is tying vampirism with stress and the ingestion of blood, the symbology of that, and its relation into medicine and shamanism. Yeah, it's mana. It's starfire. This is actual gold. This is monoatomic gold. Unfired. This is the light harvest. My starfire that I've allowed to be exposed to light. I have another full glass of starfire that I've protected from light, and it's in a like a shielded glass. This one, again, I haven't shielded from light. It smells like German chocolate cake. Or like the woods maybe. Dawn to dusk. Hi, Dawn. So this is what my starfire looks like. And I believe what Dan Winter says about monoatomic gold, that gold is actually red. But if for some reason there was like a tsunami, or like in the desert where the soil is extra salty, like if like the ocean ran over the land and made the soil too salty, you could sprinkle this stardust on the soil and it will neutralize the salt. It will sequester the salt and like give nutrients back to the soil so that you can grow crops. Okay, so and my starfire that I've shielded from light is, I'd say, more red looking, and this is more black looking. Okay, so this is the vampire in the shadow of stress management. Thus far, the discussion has focused on what stress management seeks to accomplish, describing it in its own terms and setting these terms into social and existential contexts. Now I turn to the implications of stress management by making the argument that the cure is worse than the disease. The extended metaphor, also called an allegory of a vampire, serves the end of drawing out these implications. The allegory provides a commentary on the, quote, good that stress management accomplishes. I'm going to skip over that part of the introduction of like the different literature and stuff. It's kind of boring. Its deathless body. To become a vampire, a person must undergo a physical transformation. Louis, the interviewee in Rice's first novel on the topic, the interview of the vampire, recalls what happened after he drank the blood that initiated the process. All my human fluids were being forced out of me. I was dying as a human, yet completely alive as a vampire, and with my awakened senses, I had to preside over the death of my body with a certain discomfort, and then finally fear. The vampire body, devoid of human flesh, has more acute senses, greater strength and agility, perfect health, and it never ages. In these qualities, it approaches the cultural ideal. What it is telling in Louis' account are two aspects of that transition. First, at the moment when he should die, he does not. The death of the old self, characteristic of grief, has been bypassed in this transformation. Second, the body becomes an animated corpse. During a process of change, consciousness hovers in discomfort and fear, and then in equanimity as feeling drains with the fluids. Let us imagine the scene again in the quotidian. I sit at home, tired and frazzled, exhausted from the pressures of the day, from fighting traffic, from stemming the flow from the checkbook, from watching television in order to unwind. Sleep eludes me. What I realize in the typical story of salvation from stress is that, quote, my lifestyle must change. Not, mind you, that I will refuse to participate in the noisy world. That seems unimaginable. No. I take up stress-reducing measures and soon feel better, more relaxed, more in control. Rather than dying to the stressful world, whatever that could mean at this juncture, quote, I have taken it on its own terms, becoming disciplined. Rather than give in at the moment of being drained, I bite back, becoming the center of the whirlwind, not its victim. Thereby, I become more in harmony with stress, living on its purchasable substances, energy, and information. The desperation that led me to embrace stress management is the act that transforms me into a vampire. Now stress energizes rather than drains me. I do not have to die or get sick, for I have transformed stress into my energy. As Rice depicts it, the critical moment has this form, as the initiator says to Louis, be still. I am going to drain you now to the very threshold of death, and I want you to be quiet, so quiet that you can almost hear the flow of blood through your veins, so quiet that you can hear the flow of that same blood through mine. It is your consciousness, your will, which must keep you alive. When Louis accepts at the moment of death the blood from the vampire's wrist, he experiences a wholeness and oneness known only by the infant at the breast. All loss has been overcome. In this moment of unity, there is no longer reason to suffer or grieve when, quote, I become that which would kill, quote, me. The moment does not make the vampire blind to its needs. In fact, the vampire honestly accepts its needs for other people, and anyone will do. He thinks in terms of systems. In its feeding on blood. Oh, I have to, this book is from 1997, copyright 1997, and it doesn't look like it was revised when I had this one. It's feeding on blood. The vampire's grotesque parody of the Christian Eucharist needs to be viewed in the context of the present age. Blood for us has undergone a metamorphosis. Blood used to be the very stuff of ourselves, defining us as noble or common. As one of the four humors, blood had powerful psychological and medical properties, to the extent that bloodletting was a necessary practice, as was the building up of blood. Now, however, blood is a commodity to be bought and sold, a chemical soup capable of being shared by many physiological systems. Give the gift of life, read the ads for blood drives, revealing the symbolic equivalence of blood. Blood is life, blood is energy, the raw material for living. The vampire is a blood addict. Blood enables it to maintain its animated corpse in the pink of health. Stress is for people what blood is for vampires. It is any surprise to learn that people are now becoming addicted to the stress of life. The energizing effect of undergoing stress has the potential for compulsive activity, especially when it has power as its accomplishment. I work best under pressure, or as Wayno Sujanen, an authority on human resource management, observes, quote, there is plenty of anecdotal evidence that some executives deliberately seek out the management life because they get high out of controlling people. And some managers become so proud of their ability to stand up under crises that they are always creating crises to stand up under, or are always starting fires in order to put them out. One gets addicted to the experience of transcending normal human life in these instances. Power, a strong medicine that, as noted above, can reduce stress, becomes poison, mastering those who too often find balm for their lives in its exercise. In recent years, the phenomenon of stress addiction has arisen, in part because addiction has become a catch-all term, and in part because a consumer society pushes its limits, has the addict as its ideal type. The vampire dispenses with trivial commodities, sinking its teeth into the ultimate product. The psychologist and Jungian analyst Linda Leonard concurs in part in her claim that, quote, Dracula as demon lover is an archetypical sizes the contemporary imagination. Now it appears a figure of the self. Stress addiction, or how to turn tension into energy, like the lust of the undead, goes to the source of what addiction desires, the high, that verticality which lifts us above the merely human. We addicts thus share in the vampire's fate, becoming bestial in a search of the next hit, the next sublime moment, the next crisis. Stress management produces vampires, then, to the extent that it aids in the loss of the flesh and in the adaptation to a world of relentless change. As, quote, I lose the flesh through the recession of limits by human engineering, quote, I feel more at home in an abstract, formless, noisy space-time. Stress, thus managed, promises immortality as human limits are transcended. But it is the deathlessness of the vampire, quote, I've done with grief, she said, her eyes narrowing as she looked up at me. If you knew how long to have your power, I'm ready for it. I hunger for it. So we trade grief for power, loss for energy. The conflict that grief would heal becomes harnessed for work. The absence of stress is death. What alternative is there? The phrase that heeds this section comes from Sully, and although he did not mean it quite in the way I take it, it indicates the direction. Where death has a place, stress cannot abide. The vampire narratives provide the form. Only when mortals dig up and face in the light of day what they fear becoming, and only when they dispatch the vampire in a ritual of burial, can they lay their fears to rest. The ritual slaughter of the vampire is not simply an act of violence, since the vampire craves rest. Its will cannot act on this desire. The vampire is an appropriate image for the outcome of stress management, primarily because a vampire successfully achieves not only empowerment and high self-esteem, but also immortality. The vampire stories play with the theme of earthly immortality, which has such great appeal. If the psychoanalysts are correct, at some level of our beings, we do not believe that we are mortal, so that we are all tempted to want to become something like vampires. The, quote, cure for stress management, then, is in part to reconsider the place of death in human life. In the stories, the primary means to vanquish a vampire is to locate its grave, unearth it, drive a stake through its heart, and bury it again. Then and only then will the undead find release from this life and its soul seek its final reward. Like insomniacs, vampires cannot find peace by themselves. They cannot succumb to passion, cannot be possessed by the elemental force of death that would life the burden of life. Their shoulders, it would be lift, that was a typo. Lift the burden of life from their shoulders. What heals the vampire informs us as to the place and the time of the action. The place is the body. The time is the mourning that begins at the graveside. What's up, people? Story time. Yeah, that's great. Somebody's making a cameo. The stake in the heart. Then comes C.S. Lewis. A loss that occasions grief is a wound. This is no mere analogy, but the painful reality that the bereaved feel. The location of the wound varies, but typically the heart centers the pain. Since stress is unresolved grief, it is necessary to recover the felt sense of the wound of loss in order to mourn. With stress, however, the sense of being struck is usually diffuse, less focused, given its disembodying nature. Stress bombards. We take flak from all sides. At other times, the experience has precision. Employees feel like we're the anvil and everybody's beating on us with a hammer. But whether the wounds come as the flak of hurriedness or the hammer of criticism, the first task is to disengage these moments from the engineering mentality that asks, how much can I take? Is my material adaptable enough? Can I cope? For these moments are not attacks, they are stabs in the heart of a vampire. They contain the potential to bring back to reality an old idea and perception that things that matter have their dwelling in the flesh. The work of grief that this pain facilitates can have the salutary effect of wounding us that we realize the flesh is no animated corpse, but our very selves. Loss wounds the heart, not the pump, because love and commitment dwell in the heart. When the stake is planted in the vampire's chest, blood, or energy, rushes out and the corpse decays. These are the effects one seeks in order to escape being under stress. The stab wounds of loss cannot be accounted for by the animated corpse and the knowledge, anatomy, physiology of it. Only the story of one's particular loves can express the nature of the wounds. The decaying corpse can thus begin to become flesh again. The flesh is the body of the familiar. This definition is true to the old echoes of, quote, flesh from scripture and elsewhere, which bring together the self as somebody and all that beings with somebody. Oh, and all that belongs with somebody. Flesh and my flesh, children or kin, one flesh, husband and wife. The flesh is weak, desire, passion, resistance to excesses of the spirit. Like William James's notion of the, quote, material me, the flesh is also all that is concretely mine, clothes, dwelling, possessions, land. That under stress, dwelling in the body and in places and in moments becomes problematic, means that with stress, the flesh withers, vanishes, is transcended. To bring the flesh back into perception, an anti-stress medication may prove helpful. From the secretum of Petrarch comes a meditative exercise from a late medieval tradition. A particularly graphic, even grotesque, flying in the face of our sanitized images of the healthy anatomized body. It evokes the flesh in all its materiality. Petrarch provides a guide to the proper meditation on death that is the polar opposite of our command. Relax. So here's a test which will never play you false. Every time you meditate on death without the least sign of motion, know that you have meditated in vain, as about any ordinary topic. But if in the act of meditation you find yourself suddenly grown stiff, if you tremble, turn pale, and feel as if already you endured its pains, and after meditating on the 4 final things, then you may be assured you have not meditated in vain. Notice that Petrarch urges the person meditating to feel passionately about death. In contrast with the scanning technique described above, which seems to eliminate the least motion or muscle tension, the passion that Petrarch encourages is fear or dread, which will be resolved in the meditation because the goal is to come to grips with death, not simply be terrified of it. What differentiates Petrarch's meditation from those of stress management is not only the contrast of the religious to the secular context of meditation, but which is significant in and of itself, but its insistence on passion. Stress is the absence of the passion of grief, as we have seen above. Stress is the absence of the passion of grief. Okay. What Petrarch's meditation reckons with is the necessity of submission to passion in order to grasp the realities that passion is passionate about. Now to the meditation. Of all tremendous realities, death is the most tremendous. So true is this, that from ever of old its very name is terrible and dreadful to hear. Yet though so it is, it will not do that we hear that name but lightly, or allow the remembrance of it to slip quickly from our mind. No, we must take time to realize it. We must meditate with attention thereon. We must picture to ourselves the effect of death on each several part of our bodily frame, the cold extremities, the breast in the sweat of fever, the side throbbing with pain, the vital spirits running slower and slower as death draws near, the eyes sunken and weeping, every look filled with tears, the forehead pale and drawn, the cheeks hanging and hollow, the teeth staring and discolored, the nostrils shrunk and sharpened, the lips foaming, the tongue foul and motionless, the palate parched and dry, the languid heat and panting breast, the hoarse murmur and sorrowful sign, the evil smell of the whole body, the horror of seeing the face utterly unlike itself. This practice comes from a mentality alien to the modern mind. Although in one way at least the late medieval period resembles our own, this type of meditation arose in a time of war and plague, when death was ever present. In our own day, when the term and concept megadeath has been coined in the wake of 2 world wars, bureaucratically organized genocide, and the specter of a nuclear winter, the practice of meditation on death may not be entirely foreign to our secular mentality. I call this practice an anti-stress, more nor less resilient to stress. Its aim is to pierce the quote I that lives under stress and expose it to the losses that stress as a construct makes difficult to mourn. It holds up to the imagination an image of the body as bound to loss and to death, not the animatized body, fixated by embalming fluids, but the flesh with its feelings and frailties. This vision of the dying flesh, which we are less capable of experiencing today than Petrarch's time, may move us from stress to a passion for living. You guys still there? Then it goes to burying. Ubi caritas gaudet ibi est festivitas. Where charity gives pleasure, there is the festivity. Where love gives pleasure, there is the festivity. Stress occurs when losses of the familiar, which happen at an accelerating pace, become problems to solve and challenges to face. When the invocation and progress in efficiency fall upon the earth like manna. This peculiarly modern form of grief allows for no resolution, for the position of loss keeps us energized, pining for we know not what feelings are inferiorities and helplessness, and hence vulnerable to the demand that we take charge and flexibly adapt. So we willingly bite back on that which feeds us, hungry for anything to fill the void that white noise creates. To stop for death is a first step to enable the grief to emerge from the iron bands of stress, then to celebrate loss through mourning. But that has been rendered difficult. Nietzsche, who saw our times of stress on the horizon, observed, "The trick is not to arrange a festival, but to find people who can enjoy it." We are incapable of celebration to the extent that we live stress as stress. Men under stress live in no man's land. They cannot, we cannot stop for death. Take the time to acknowledge the completeness of things as they are, which affirmation grounds celebration, even the celebration surrounding death. Vampires, the addicted, the stressed out, cannot acclaim the goodness of things as they are. How to celebrate mourning? How, that is, to lay the vampire to rest, cover the grave, pray for its soul, walk back to town? Laying the vampire to rest means in part easing its neediness. The constant need for fresh blood drives the vampire, and the ambivalence of its grief keeps it so needy. To begin to celebrate mourning means to celebrate the neediness rather than satiate it with fixes of energy. Interesting. Celebrate the neediness instead of giving that neediness the energy it wants. Mourning begins when we are exhausted, stressed out, frazzled. I have extended the allegory of the vampire to include what, quote, cures a person of the condition. Nevertheless, it is important to recognize that this so-called cure is not a new prescription about what to do when, quote, stressed out. I do not envision support groups beginning using Petrarchian meditation, for example. Part of our current dilemma is that academics and other professionals concoct treatments for the illness of being alive. My task is complete if I can provoke a pause in the automatic function of problem solving. Something vital happens when the power to solve problems is renounced. Now to conclude. The rush of stress covers a poverty of the more profound because it is unrecognized. I'm not signaling, I just had a scratch. The rush of stress covers a poverty of all the more profound because it is unrecognized. The energy of stress has its generator in the betwixt and between nature of stress, the alien world, the ambivalence towards loss. The accommodation to change. A stockpile of emptiness builds up, and not being recognized, not lived through in bereavement, feeds the frantic pace. Then, quote, wiped out, the cycle begins anew. To refuse energy in the name of poverty makes celebration possible. To be thus impoverished is a condition no commodity can enrich. Only the gifts that come freely in celebration can answer such poverty. In this celebration of the loss of the flesh and the familiar, we find that we are reflected not in the chrome and glass of downtown, the coffins of vampires, but in the bums and bag ladies looking in the trash cans, or in hands outstretched, asking for a gift. They teach us how to be poor, ask for a gift. Gifts are not scarce commodities. They are always essentially plentiful. With arms outstretched, backs turned to the temples of scarcity, we celebrate. A festival is essentially a phenomenon of wealth, not, to be sure, the wealth of money, but the existential richness. Absence of calculation, in fact lavishness, is one of its elements. Thus, enfleshed and impoverished, we celebrate our losses, not nostalgic for the past, not enthralled with the brave new world. In enacting grief for ourselves and our world, we take up a place, stepping from white noise with its swirling winds and fast lanes. Our place is filled with modern junk, surrounded by noise and speed, with fleshless, energized, calm vampires, but a place nonetheless in which to bury the dead. I thought that was very timely to what we're experiencing here. Thought you were going to be bald. No, this is my hair growth. Last time I shaved my head was it was like the beginning of April of 2019. So this is like 3 years growth of white girl fine baby hair. That's how long it takes. So if you plan on shaving your head, know it's gonna take a long time. But I wasn't eating meat for a while. I wasn't eating meat until like, I've always eaten dairy and cheese. But I just started eating meat like 2 years ago. So that might have affected my bald little sprouts coming out. Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So this book is 1997, and it's saying that vampires are addicts of energy, and this lifeless pursuit of quelling the hunger, and to get to really kind of ascend this land of the dead, we have to stop feeding the hunger and celebrate the hunger. So we become like so impoverished of that energy that we're craving that we're able to grieve the death. And then from that, we're able to kill the vampire and kill that addiction or kill the stress, because you're able to grieve for it instead of feeding it. What else can vampires are endless. Yeah. I thought it was interesting too. They said that the skyscrapers are the coffins that we see our reflections in. And until you like, and that's true, like when I lived in the city, I would always be looking at my reflection as, you know, looking at yourself and like checking yourself out, see how you look to other people, you know, like your, you know, first impression. You'd always be like checking your reflection in cars and building windows and like purposely ignoring the poor people. And it's like you're walking through the city of the necropolis, like San Francisco, walking through the city of the dead, and I was reflecting on the coffins, the skyscrapers, and it's not until you Owens just oh, you said Eve Owens. I owe Eve? Okay. No, I don't. I don't know Eve. But you start to switch and see yourself in the poor people, because you've starved that vampire, you've starved that addict, that energy quencher. So anyways, this is my starfire. The light. I have another full one that's of dark, that's I've protected from light. You guys want to ask me anything? I have 15 people in the chat. Woo-wee. All right, I'll give you guys a treat. We can look at some old photographs. Because I'm sitting right next to my We'll look at one. We'll look at one thing. Make it a good one. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a good old time. Ooh, scandalous pictures. Scandalous pictures. You guys want to see scandalous pictures? Those might be too scandalous. It's gonna be a good time. This is me, a senior in high school, with my best friend, Lasana Sanderson. Well, she was my best friend as a kid. I was 18 years old, 2002, 20 years ago. That was my best friend. That was my best friend, Lindsay and Brittany. Brittany had gigantic titties. That's me. That was grad night. We had a big party at the high school, arranged by all the parents. There was some kind of like poker chips I had there or something. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a good time. Ooh. Some dogs that died. There's Oliver and Sophie. What? Is it a good dog? It was like selfie before selfies existed. That's like original selfie photographic selfie. What is it? It's gonna be a good time. Do you guys have questions for me? Look, there's my friend on the toilet. That's Casey. That was my friend making out with a neighbor boy. This is in Santa Barbara. This is Santa Barbara. Isla Vista. Those were my party days. That was back when you could walk into anybody's house on DP, Del Playa, and you can just like walk into people's houses because everybody was partying. They shut it down though after that. MGTOW, incel guy, he went and shot everybody in Isla Vista, UC Santa Barbara. Oh, this is 80s night. Just a bunch of clones. Just a bunch of 80s clones. 80s night. Do college students even do this stuff anymore? I don't think they do. This is Halloween. I was a pirate. Oh, Skull and Bones. I like to take pictures of my friends in the bathroom for some reason. I went to Diablo Valley College. That means it was part of Mount Diablo. It's a devil mountain. Well, I think we'll wrap that up. I showed you my Starfire. We read about vampires in the city. It was good. It was all good. Having to go through, it's like going to grandma's house. Yeah, I'm pretty, you know, granified. You know. So, I love y'all. Thanks for joining me. What is Starfire? Starfire is my menstrual blood. This is my dried menstrual blood. It's also called Ormus, monoatomic gold. But this is going to save the world. It's called Alchemy, Alchemy, Aphrodite, na. If you haven't seen my video on Ormus, please check it out. I explain it all there. It's all about the blood. If you don't know, now you know. You know what? I think, you know what? I'm gonna smoke it. I've been wanting to smoke it. Let's smoke it. Let's smoke this shit. Be right back. So I'm gonna take a piece of this here. It's my Starfire. So white, powdered gold, we do. It really crackles. Do you hear it? It doesn't really want to burn per se. Did you hear that? Danny Skylark told me it has gunpowder in it. I believe it. Do you guys see any sparks? It must have the phosphorus. That's like the Lucifer. Ooh. Let's see again. That really had some activity there. I am feeling more of a tingling on my lips that I don't normally have. Yeah, so I'm just gonna have a field day of this. Oh, I can't wait. Alright, that's it. I'm still here. Can't stop watching. So disgusting. How could she, the freaking vampire slut, disgusting hermaphrodite, whore, squid witch, bitch.